My sister-in-law stole my custom wedding dress to wear as a Halloween costume and brought it back soaking wet, stained with red wine, and utterly ripped. My husband, Adam, then froze her entire college fund until she makes it right. The gravity of that decision, the echoes of family discord, it's all still ringing in my ears. I'm your name, 27F, and I've been married to Adam, 29M, for just over a year. A year that has, until recently, been filled with blissful normalcy, the quiet hum of a life being built together. But then, Halloween arrived, and with it, a nightmare that has shaken our family to its core. The dress. Oh, the dress. It wasn't just a dress, it was a dream woven into fabric. Then there's Becca, Adam's younger sister, 19F. Fresh-faced, bright-eyed, and undeniably charming in her own impulsive way. She's in her first year of college, living on campus a mere stone's throw from our house, a convenience we once cherished. Our relationship with her has always been close, almost familial in a different sense. Adam, with his decade-long age gap, practically helped raise her. He's always been fiercely protective, generous to a fault. This generosity manifested itself most concretely in the form of a college fund he meticulously built for her, a substantial $50,000, which he alone manages. Our in-laws aren't exactly wealthy. They've always struggled to make ends meet, so Adam's fund was Becca's golden ticket, covering her tuition and expenses, a safety net woven with his hard work and love. Becca, bless her heart, is generally a fun-loving kid. But beneath that bubbly exterior, there's a streak of impulsiveness, a hint of being spoiled, perhaps an inevitable consequence of being the youngest, the baby of the family. Her past misadventures were usually minor, easily forgivable scrapes. A fender bender here, a lost wallet there, minor inconveniences that the family, with their inherent tenderness for Becca, always swept under the rug with a gentle sigh and a knowing smile. We always believed she meant no real harm, naive perhaps, because nothing, absolutely nothing in her history could have prepared us for the magnitude of what she was about to do. A single, thoughtless act that would shatter not just a dress, but the delicate equilibrium of our family and ignite a feud that would engulf us all. Last weekend, the air crackled with the playful mischief of Halloween. Adam and I, true homebodies at heart, chose a quiet night in. We were oblivious, handing out candy to trick-or-treaters, enjoying the simple joy of children's laughter. Becca, however, had grander plans. A sprawling costume party with her college friends, followed by a night of bar hopping. What we didn't know, couldn't possibly have imagined, was that earlier that fateful day, she had paid our house an unannounced visit. She has a spare key, a token of trust given for emergencies, or for those times she needed a quiet place to study, away from the dorm's incessant buzz. It was a common occurrence. She'd crash at our place sometimes, being so close to campus. But this time, her visit was different. We weren't home. I believe I was out grocery shopping. Adam was at work. A perfectly normal Saturday. She later admitted she came over to look for costume pieces, apparently thinking our house, with its eclectic mix of decor and clothes, might hold some forgotten gem she could repurpose for her night out. A harmless treasure hunt, she probably thought, but instead of a forgotten gem, she found the garment bag in the guest room closet, the one protecting my wedding dress. The first flicker of unease didn't come from an empty closet. It came later that night, a little past midnight. My phone, buzzing quietly on the bedside table, lit up with an unfamiliar number. It was a text message, short and cryptic. "Hey, is Becca with you? She's wearing some wild white dress. Thought you might know where she got it." My heart skipped a beat. A wild white dress? I dismissed it, thinking it was probably just a friend, maybe mistaking a party frock for something more. But a seed of apprehension had been planted. The next morning, the sun was bright, mocking the storm brewing within. As I folded laundry, I remembered the guest room closet. It was then, as I reached for the garment bag to put away some seasonal linens, that my world tilted. The bag was unzipped, gaping, and utterly, terrifyingly empty. No, this can't be missing," I whispered, frantically tearing through the closet, then the entire house. I desperately hoped I had merely moved it, forgotten its new hiding place, but deep down, a cold dread was settling in. My heart sank. I knew. I called Adam, my voice thick with panic, demanding to know if he'd moved it. He was as confused, as horrified as I was. Within minutes, my mind, sharp with fear, landed on Becca. She was the only other person with a key. The only other person who would dare. I called her. No answer. Texted her. Silence. Even my mother-in-law, MIL, who usually picked up within 2 rings, was unreachable. By now, my unease had morphed into a raw, burning anger. I didn't wait. I got into my car and drove, a blur of motion, to Becca's dorm. She wasn't there. Her roommate, looking uncomfortable, said she was out. A couple of agonizing hours later, Becca finally called me back. Her voice, strangely cheerful, grated on my nerves. "Hey, what's up?" she chirped. My throat felt tight. "Becca," I began, my voice trembling. "Were you at our house yesterday? Did you take a white dress from my closet?" She casually replied, "Oh yeah, I borrowed that white dress in the garment bag. Hope you don't mind. It was just hanging there and I needed something for a costume." The nonchalance, the utter disregard was a fresh wound. I swear I tried to keep it together, but a primal scream tore from my lungs. "You mean my wedding dress? That was my wedding dress, Becca." A second of stunned silence, then a meek, "Oh, I thought it was just some old dress. I didn't realize it was that dress." Her apology was a half-assed mumble. "Sorry, honestly didn't think it was a big deal." At this point, I was shaking with an incandescent rage. "You were unbelievably out of line to take anything from my house, let alone something so important," I yelled, demanding she bring it back now. She texted back, promising to swing by later with it, but I wasn't about to wait calmly. The world seemed to spin faster, the colors around me blurring into a kaleidoscope of fury. I called Adam, who was equally livid, and left work early, rushing home to face the impending storm. When Becca finally showed up at our house that evening, the air was thick with unspoken anger. I was ready to explode. She sauntered in, my precious wedding gown crumpled carelessly in a plastic Target bag, dripping wet. My eyes widened in horror. The dress was not just wrinkled, it was soaked, stained a grotesque red, reeking of alcohol. As she pulled it out, a choked sob escaped my lips, tears blurring my vision. It looked like a murder scene on white satin. There were huge, ominous red wine stains, or perhaps some foul cocktail, smeared all down the front and across the train. The delicate fabric at the bottom was ripped in multiple places, jagged tears marring the lace. It was utterly, irrevocably ruined. I lost it. Tears streamed down my face as I screamed at her. "What the hell were you thinking, Becca?" Adam, usually the calm and composed one, went eerily silent, his face a mask of cold fury as he stared at the desecrated dress. Becca, finally breaking, started bawling, a torrent of, "I'm sorry, it was an accident," pouring from her lips. She rambled, claiming some drunk girl at the bar had bumped into her, spilling a drink all over the dress, and that the rip happened when she caught it on something. Her eyes, wide and tearful, pleaded innocence. "I didn't know it was your wedding dress. I thought it was just an old spare dress or a costume piece." But I wasn't buying it. Not for a second. "I call BS, Becca," I shrieked. "It literally looks like a wedding gown. Plus, who keeps an $8,000 dress just casually hanging around unless it's important?" Between my sobbing and Adam's deathly silence, Becca's apologies began to curdle into defensiveness. Her sorries morphed into flimsy excuses and blame-shifting. "How was I supposed to know?" she whined, her voice rising in pitch. "You left it in the closet just like any other dress, and it's not like I did it on purpose," I retaliated, my voice raw. "Anyone with eyes could see it's not a cheap party costume. The quality alone, the detailing. How could you possibly think that was just some random dress?" She kept repeating her apologies, but then had the gall, the audacity, to get snippy, accusing me of overreacting because it's just a dress. That was the breaking point. It wasn't just a dress, Becca. It was my wedding dress. My parents spent a fortune on it, and you had absolutely no right to take it, even if it were $10 from a thrift store. I was livid, consumed by tears and rage. Adam, who had been a silent, menacing presence, finally spoke, his voice low and dangerous. "Becca," he commanded. "You need to leave. Now." Becca, still sobbing, stumbled out the door. In the heat of the moment, as she was leaving, I couldn't help but yell after her. "You owe me $8,000 for that dress!" She shrieked back. "I don't have that kind of money. You're crazy if you expect a 19-year-old to pay that." My response was curt, fueled by pure adrenaline. "Well, you better figure something out." Then I slammed the door, the sound echoing the finality of the moment. Not my finest moment, I'll admit, but I was utterly beside myself. That night, Adam and I sat in our living room, the ruined dress a crumpled monument to thoughtlessness. We were devastated. I cried, a torrent of grief and anger, while Adam, his face etched with a pain I rarely saw, simply comforted me. This dress, imbued with so much history and hope, meant the world, not just to me, but to my entire family. Adam, usually so calm, so incredibly generous with his sister, was simmering with a rage that surprised even me. "I'm not using another dime of my money on her until she makes this right," he declared, his voice tight with resolve. It's important to note, I hadn't suggested anything about her college fund, or money at all. This was purely his reaction, his protective instinct for me, for what was ours, asserting itself. The next day, my MIL finally called me back. She had, by now, undoubtedly heard Becca's tearful, likely skewed version of events. Mel started gently. "What happened, honey? Are you okay?" I explained, my voice raw. The full extent of the dress's destruction, the depth of our upset. Mill offered her perfunctory apologies. "I'm so sorry this happened." But then, inevitably, came the defense. "Becca's really sorry. She's young and she truly didn't realize it was your wedding gown. It was a dumb mistake, but we all make mistakes." I bristled. "This wasn't just a dumb mistake, Mel. This was a huge breach of trust. I'm not just going to sweep it under the rug. At minimum, the dress needs to be paid for or replaced." Mill's tone hardened. Mill then shifted tactics, focusing on Becca's distress. "Becca's hysterical, thinking Adam might pull her college funding," she wailed, painting Adam as a heartless villain. "She's crying that you both hate her, that Adam's trying to ruin her life over a mistake." I bit back. "Frankly, ML, I support my husband's decision. He saved that money for her. If he feels this is the appropriate consequence until she takes responsibility, then so be it. Maybe that's the only thing that will make her understand how serious this is." Mill became incensed, accusing me of being inconsiderate, of being okay with ruining a young girl's future. "We're all family," she pleaded. "You should have a heart. Becca didn't intend to ruin your dress." My resolve hardened. Having a heart is one thing, Mill. Facing consequences is another. If someone wrecks something extremely valuable through their negligence, family or not, they need to make it right. And Becca hasn't once offered to do anything but say sorry. Not a peep about paying for it or working it off. Nothing. Just crocodile tears and expecting us to forgive her on the spot. Where is she going to get that kind of money? Mill despaired. "You know she doesn't have a job." My voice was firm. "Not my problem. Maybe you and Phil can help her, or she can take out a small loan since it's her doing." The call ended with Emil calling me unreasonable and vowing to speak with Adam soon, but Adam fully backed me. To be clear, he was just as angry, if not more so. In fact, he'd already told his parents he was freezing the college fund until Becca properly resolved this, either by paying for the dress or coming up with a solution we all agreed on. That $50,000 wasn't legally hers. It was an account in his name, earmarked for her. He'd already paid for the current semester, but he informed them that future payments were on hold. Now the entire family was in an uproar, and I, unwillingly, found myself at the center of it all. The news of Adam's decision, the freezing of Becca's college fund, detonated like a bomb within the family. Becca herself was beside herself, her texts flooding my phone, pleading, sobbing, begging us not to take away her education. In one breath, she was sorry a million times. In the next, she called me heartless for letting Adam do this to her. The hypocrisy was a bitter pill to swallow. My Mill, of course, championed Becca's cause, and even some extended family members, an aunt, a distant cousin, started chiming in, accusing us of being way too harsh, and me, specifically, of being the a-hole for valuing a dress over her college career. One aunt, in a particularly venomous group chat message, declared that I was basically throwing away the relationship with Sil over a piece of clothing. This relentless drama began to take its toll. A creeping guilt gnawed at me. Was I truly forcing Adam into a feud with his own sister and family over my dress? On the other hand, the anger over what she did, the sheer disrespect, still burned fiercely. I believed fundamentally that some people only learn when confronted with real consequences. We had given her a path to make it right, and all she offered were tears and excuses about how it's too hard. If it were solely up to me, I might have settled for less, covering professional cleaning and preservation, a few $100, a deep, sincere apology, and maybe some volunteer work to instill a sense of value. But Adam was unyielding, until she truly understood the gravity, which, in his mind, meant either coughing up the cash or feeling the very real loss of her college fund. He would not back down. Am I the a-hole for being this upset and refusing to just forgive and forget? I found myself questioning. Then came update 1. The story, it turned out, had resonated with countless strangers online, validating my feelings and sometimes making the harsh realities even harder to read. The overwhelming consensus, NTA, not the a-hole. That feedback honestly was a lifeline, pulling me back from the brink of self-doubt. So much had transpired since my initial post, a whirlwind of events that demanded further clarification. First, the incessant question. Why was your wedding dress in the guest closet? How did Becca not realize it was your wedding dress? After the wedding, our master closet, like many, was simply too small. The voluminous garment bag protecting my gown took up an absurd amount of space, so I carefully moved it to the guest room closet. And, silly as it sounds, there was a small, hopeful secret. I was half hiding it in case we had an event, like an anniversary photo shoot, where I could surprise Adam by wearing it again. The guest room closet felt like a safe, undisturbed haven. And let me be clear, it was in a proper bridal garment bag from the boutique, not some random costume piece thrown on a hanger. Becca, I guess, had never been involved in handling wedding dresses, but I still couldn't fathom how she didn't at least suspect. It literally had my name stitched into the inside lining. She claimed she never fully opened it until she got to her dorm, that it just looked like a fancy white dress. I'm skeptical, to say the least. Second, did Becca have permission to be in our house, take things? She has a spare key for emergencies, or if she needed a quiet place to study. We've always been fine with her dropping by, but she usually asks first. In this instance, she did not ask to come over, nor did she ask to take anything. So no, she had zero permission to take the dress, or any clothes. She'd borrowed a sweater or jewelry here and there in the past, always with my explicit permission. Grabbing something without even a text was beyond out of line. Third, what's the deal with the $50,000 college fund? To clarify, that money is entirely my husband's. He started saving it when he landed a high-paying job a few years ago. His parents have always struggled financially, and he's incredibly protective of Becca. So he saved enough to cover about 4 years of in-state college for her, kept in a separate account under his name. It was never officially her money, never a trust fund. It's essentially his personal savings earmarked for her tuition, which he's been paying directly each semester. So, legally and morally, it's his money, and withholding it is entirely within his rights. My in-laws contributed nothing to that fund. They cover some of her living expenses when they can, but not tuition. Fourth, have I told my parents, the ones who bought the dress? After much deliberation and some online advice, I decided to hold off telling them every agonizing detail until I had more information on whether the dress could be salvaged. My mom, especially, would be heartbroken and furious. As of this update, I had only vaguely hinted to her that the dress had an accident, and we were working on it. She was upset, but I deliberately downplayed the drama to spare them further stress. If it comes to pursuing repayment, I will have to tell them the whole truth. For now, Adam and I were shouldering this burden alone. Fifth, can the dress be salvaged cleaned? We immediately took the dress to a highly recommended specialty bridal cleaner the day after the incident. Their grim assessment, red wine on delicate fabric, especially after it had set, is one of the absolute worst stains. They've been working on it, but it doesn't look promising. Even if the stains mostly come out, the fabric is weakened where it was soaked, and the ripped layers of chiffon and tulle are incredibly difficult to repair to their original pristine state. We're expecting an update soon. Best case scenario, it might be wearable-ish, but forever marred by faint stains and repaired seams. Worst case, it's unsalvageable. Either way, it will never again be the pristine gown it once was. 2 days after the incident, and a day after my initial post, the time for mere phone calls and texts was over. Adam and I drove to my in-laws' house for a serious face-to-face talk. Mill had extended the invitation, claiming it would be good for all of us to discuss calmly. My anger and hurt were still palpable, a raw wound, but we agreed. Everyone had been talking past each other, caught in a swirling vortex of accusations and defenses. When we arrived, Phil, my father-in-law, and Mill were there, and Becca, having come home from college for the weekend, sat hunched on the sofa, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. She refused to meet my gaze. We all settled into their living room, the air thick with tension. I let Adam take the lead. It was his family, after all, though I was prepared to chime in plenty. Mill, ever the peacemaker, began, "We're all family here. Let's remember we love each other and try to resolve this calmly." Adam, his voice tightly controlled, retorted immediately, "I'll be calm as long as I hear some acknowledgement of what actually went wrong here." He was clearly seething, barely holding it together. He turned to Becca, his eyes piercing. "What were you thinking, Becca? Explain to me how you thought taking any dress from our house without asking was okay." Becca started sniffling, her voice a thin, reedy whine. "I don't know, I just thought it was a party costume. I didn't think it was a big deal." I couldn't help myself. It was a huge deal, Becca. Even if it wasn't my wedding dress, going into someone's closet and taking clothes without permission is basic disrespect. She mumbled another sorry, but it sounded less like contrition and more like a petulant complaint. Adam pressed on, his disappointment palpable. "Your lack of judgment, it genuinely shocks and disappoints me. You, of all people, should have realized how much my name treasures that dress. You were at our wedding, you've seen the photos. It's not like you've never seen the dress before." At this point, MIL, seeing Becca distressed, interjected, "She knows she messed up, Adam. She's apologized. We need to move forward." I jumped in, my patience wearing thin. Moving forward means figuring out how to make this right. Saying sorry doesn't magically restore my dress. I struggled to stay composed, the hurt still so raw. I haven't even been able to fully break the news to my mom because it's such a damn shame. Phil, who had remained quiet, sighed, then asked, "What is it exactly that you want to happen now?" I responded, my voice firm. "At minimum, the cost of the dress should be reimbursed or a replacement obtained. I know it's not easy, but that's what happens when you ruin something you can't fix." I added a conciliatory note. I'd even be willing to accept a good faith effort, like if Becca could pay, say, half now and half later or something reasonable, but an attempt needs to be made. Upon hearing cost of the dress, Becca burst into fresh tears, and Emil's face contorted in pain. "You know she doesn't have that kind of money. She's just a student. How do you expect her to come up with $8,000? Adam, anticipating my answer, cut in sharply. "Maybe by getting a job or taking out a loan, or you, MIL, and Phil. I don't care how. That's not our problem to figure out for her. People take responsibility by problem solving, not by expecting the wronged party to eat the loss." Mill flared up. "We don't have that kind of money either. This whole thing was it was a mistake. Can't we find a less drastic solution?" She turned to me, desperation in her eyes, and actually tried to bargain. "What if we pay for the dry cleaning and restoration attempts, and maybe a little extra for your trouble? But $8,000 is just impossible. The dress might be beyond restoration, and a little extra for your trouble." Felt like they were treating this like a minor inconvenience. I told her as much. "I appreciate the gesture, but a few $100 and a cleaning solvent aren't going to undo what happened. If the cleaner can't fully fix it, we're talking about replacing it or reimbursing the value. That dress was custom. Replacing it isn't as simple as buying off the rack. And even off-the-rack bridal gowns in that style are several thousand." At this point, Becca, through her sobs, screamed, "I don't have that money." She was full-on crying into her hands. "If I had known it was your wedding dress, I never would have touched it. I'm sorry, but I can't afford this, and now I'm going to lose my college money. It's not fair. I didn't do it on purpose. That's when Adam truly snapped. He raised his voice the first time that night, his frustration boiling over. You're right, Becca. You didn't do it on purpose, but you did do it. And now you're more concerned about your college fund than the fact that you seriously screwed up and hurt someone? You're calling it not fair that you face consequences? What do you think is fair then? That my wife just sucks it up and everyone acts like you didn't ruin something irreplaceable? Becca just cried harder, mumbling, I said I was sorry. Mill put her arm around Becca, starting to tear up too, pleading with Adam. Please, Adam, she is sorry. This is all just too much. You can't take away her education. Think of her future, he replied, his voice firm. I am thinking of her future. I'm thinking that if we let this go with zero consequences, then in her future, she'll think she can do whatever and hide behind. But I said sorry. Real life doesn't work that way. If a stranger wrecked her car, would she be okay if they just said sorry and walked away? Why should this be any different? Phil, who had been a silent observer, finally spoke, his voice heavy with resignation. Son, I get it. I really do. But you have to understand, we can't conjure money out of thin air. Neither can she. By punishing her by pulling the college fund, you're basically shooting yourself in the foot too. Do you really want your sister to potentially drop out or take on massive loans? Is that what you want for her life? Adam's response was unwavering. What I want is for my sister to take ownership of the harm she caused. I'm not asking for something unreasonable. I'm basically telling her, until you show that you are making this right, I am not going to keep funding you. If she chooses to drop out instead of maybe taking a temporary loan or working part-time to pay for this, that's her choice. She's not a child. She's an adult who made an adult mistake. At this point, I could tell Adam was getting exhausted by going in circles. I was too. We had been at their house for over an hour, and it felt like nothing was getting resolved, just the same arguments rehashed endlessly. The family was begging for mercy. We were standing firm that mercy without accountability was meaningless. It was tense, emotionally draining. I finally spoke up, offering a suggestion to break the impasse. I proposed that we all take a couple of days to cool off and maybe look into solutions. For example, I said, maybe there's a way to get a replacement dress that isn't the full $8,000, like a second-hand one or a sample sale, that could reduce the cost. I would even be willing to consider a payment plan from Becca over a couple of years, or that she could do something like work for me, I have a small business, to work it off at a reasonable rate. But I emphasized, the bottom line is, we need some commitment from her and my in-laws, that they will handle the financial repercussions of her actions. Mill, looking utterly spent, said, We'll discuss it among ourselves, but please, in the meantime, Adam, don't do anything hasty about the college fund. She's got to register for classes for next semester soon. Adam curtly replied, That depends on Becca. If she can come up with a real plan to make this right, I'm willing to reconsider. If not, she might have to skip a semester. That's on her. We ended the meeting shortly after. Everyone was upset and emotionally raw. Adam and I left, and on the drive home, we just sat in silence for a while, decompressing from the emotional onslaught. So, that's where things stood after the face-to-face talk. No final resolution yet. My in-laws and Becca knew we meant business, and we were waiting to hear if they would come up with a proposal. Honestly, I wasn't super hopeful they would have a great plan given their reactions so far, but we'd see. One more thing. After we got home, I got a text from Becca. An apology. It read like she, or maybe Mael, had coached it a bit. She said she was truly sorry for not asking and for ruining such an important thing of mine, and that she never wanted to hurt me. She said she was scared and didn't know how to fix it, but she was willing to do whatever it takes to not lose our support for her college. She did, however, kind of guilt-trip me by saying the whole situation was making her feel like a horrible person, and she was having panic attacks about her future. I didn't respond yet. I needed a little space because I was still angry, and I didn't want to say something I'd regret. For now, Adam and I were holding our ground. We'd made it clear. No sweeping this under the rug. She needed to figure out a way to compensate for the damage, at least partially, or there would be serious, life-altering consequences for her. The ball was in their court. A week later, the dust, or rather the wine stains, had anything but settled. So many of you online wanted updates, and eerily, some of you predicted almost exactly what would happen next. You were spot on about a few things. It had been a full week since my last update, and in that time, things escalated dramatically between Adam and his family before, perhaps finally finding a path towards something better. And the news from the wedding dress cleaners? It was grim. First, the dress. The specialty cleaner, despite their valiant efforts, confirmed what I already dreaded in my heart. The dress was ruined. The stubborn red stains had faded slightly, but they were still undeniably visible, a ghostly blush across the pristine white satin. In some spots, the delicate fabric was permanently tinted a sickly pinkish brown, a constant reminder of Becca's recklessness. The material had also shrunk and distorted a bit where it was soaked for too long, the delicate fibers irrevocably damaged. The tears, yes, they could be mended, but the dress would never, ever look right again. They had tried one round of aggressive treatment, and the owner, a kind woman with weary eyes, advised against further attempts. Further aggressive attempts might deteriorate the fabric more, she warned. In short, I had to accept it. My wedding gown would never be the same. They charged a small fee for their efforts, a mere formality, and sadly returned the dress to me, still stained and torn. I actually cried again when I picked it up, a little embarrassing in front of the shop lady, but she was very kind. This happens more often than you'd think, she said gently. Red wine is a nightmare on wedding dresses. So, yeah, it was official. The dress was a total loss. That news solidified my resolve even further. Becca, or my in-laws, needed to pay to replace it or at least compensate for its full value. The cleaner even provided a formal letter stating the damage and the impossibility of restoration to its original state. A document that felt unsettlingly useful should we ever pursue a legal route or an insurance claim, as some of you had suggested. But more on that later. Now, on the family front. After that explosive meeting, my in-laws went mostly quiet for a few days. I suspected they were huddled, discussing, strategizing, and perhaps giving everyone a much-needed breather. Adam and I tried to reclaim some semblance of normalcy, to enjoy a drama-free weekend. We even went on a hike to clear our heads, which helped, if only momentarily. But the fragile silence broke, and it broke hard, that Monday. What happened Monday? Becca, it seemed, had decided to take her grievances to a wider, more sympathetic audience. She apparently told a few friends and cousins a very skewed, victimized version of the story, and it spread like wildfire on social media. I started getting some odd vibes from a couple of my own friends, asking what was going on because they had seen posts. Turns out someone, either Becca herself or one of her sympathetic friends, had posted on Instagram something to the effect of, "When your own brother would rather see you drop out of college than forgive you for a mistake. Family can be cruel." It didn't mention the dress explicitly, but anyone even remotely close to the family would instantly know it was about us. I was beyond annoyed. She hadn't bothered to mention the part where she literally caused all this by doing something utterly idiotic, by stealing and destroying a cherished possession. It felt like she was deliberately fishing for sympathy and painting Adam as the cruel villain. And to an extent, it worked. One of their cousins, whom we weren't particularly close to, commented something like, "OMG, I heard that's so harsh, you don't deserve that." And a college friend of hers chimed in, "They're supposed to be your family. If my sister did that, I'd disown her." Massive eye roll. Adam and I talked about it, his face a thundercloud. He was absolutely furious that she was airing intensely personal family issues online for strangers and extended family members to dissect and gossip about. He wasted no time. From his own account, he commented directly on her post, something along the lines of, "Interesting how you left out the part where you stole and ruined something irreplaceable that belonged to us. Actions have consequences, Becca." Adam rarely engages in social media drama, so his comment spoke volumes about his fury. Within minutes, she deleted his comment and then, preemptively, blocked both him and me on Instagram. Cowardice, I thought. Then, the floodgates opened. Adam started getting calls and texts from various family members, most notably, the same aunt who had initially scolded me in the group chat and his grandmother. They were all asking, What in the world is going on? Why are people saying Adam is making Becca drop out of school? So, Adam had to patiently, painstakingly, explain the actual story to them, omitting no details. The aunt, to her credit, did a complete 180 when she heard the full context. She was horrified at Becca's actions. Grandma, too. They both basically told Adam, "We're so sorry. We didn't know the whole story. Of course she should face consequences. We'll talk to your mom." I later noticed that Becca's vague, victim-playing posts were gone from a different account that I used. I strongly suspected the family elders had given her a stern talking to, but the damage was done in terms of stirring up unnecessary drama. This whole thing was starting to feel like a full-blown family feud, one that I never, ever wanted. After that social media fiasco, Miel called Adam. I was on the call too, listening, my heart thumping. She sounded utterly exhausted, her voice thick with what sounded like unshed tears. "We've talked it over," she began, her tone a stark contrast to her previous defensiveness. "We will try to get together some money to help repay for the dress." I jumped in, my voice careful. "We appreciate them stepping up with an offer. If they could truly gather $4,000, that's a start, but it wouldn't fully cover a replacement dress of similar quality." Still, I continued. "I am willing to consider that as an acceptable resolution if, and this is a big if, Becca herself also contributed something, either money she earns or an official commitment to pay the remaining balance over time. And very importantly, a genuine apology taking full ownership." Adam agreed, adding that if they did that, he'd release most of the college fund, perhaps with some conditions. "I want it understood," he added, "that this isn't us putting a price on the issue and washing our hands. It's about Becca learning she can't just do things without making amends." Mill, sounding relieved, agreed, saying they had intended for Becca to pay us back gradually for whatever amount they fronted. I had a strong feeling they were stretching themselves to even consider $4,000. I wasn't sure if they'd take a loan or pull from retirement, but it sounded like they were scrambling. We told them to put together a concrete plan, a timeline of payment, for example, and to have Becca write out and sign her part as well. Basically, we wanted this in writing. It might sound formal for family, but after all the back and forth, we needed it on paper to prevent any misunderstandings later. Adam reiterated that if they produced this, he would unfreeze the college fund so she could register for next semester on time. Mill was agreeable, sounding immensely relieved that we weren't insisting on the full $8,000 up front. We hung up with the understanding that they would draft a plan and we would review it. During all this, I hadn't directly spoken to Becca since the text she sent after the last family meeting. But about an hour after that call with MIL, Becca sent me an email. It honestly surprised me. It was thoughtful, comprehensive, and truly apologetic. She said she was sorry for trying to garner sympathy online, sorry for initially downplaying what she did, and that she now realized how badly she had violated my trust. She wrote that she had woken up that day thinking about how she'd feel if someone ruined something so precious to her, and finally understood why I was as angry as I was. She also stated that she was willing to work as much as needed to pay us back, even if it takes years, and that she valued her relationship with us more than some stupid partying. Her words, not mine. She admitted that at first she was mainly scared of losing the college fund, but she now understood why we had taken such a hard stance. She said she was ashamed she made our family fight and brought drama to our door. It read as incredibly sincere, a genuine shift from the defensive, avoidant Becca we had faced before. Both Adam and I were actually kind of impressed by the tone. It felt like a real turning point. I replied to her email, a phone call still felt too raw, thanking her for genuinely apologizing. I told her I accepted her apology and appreciated her taking responsibility in writing. I said I was still very sad about losing my dress, but I was hopeful we could all move past this in time if she stuck to what she was saying about making amends. I didn't lay into her or anything. I kept it calm and reiterated that I was willing to work with her and her parents on a fair resolution. Things, it seemed, were finally moving in the right direction. Until, of course, one more mini-drama occurred. Some of you online had floated the idea of insurance. Well, purely out of curiosity, I looked into whether my homeowner's insurance or a special wedding policy might cover the dress. I discovered I didn't have a specific rider on our insurance for expensive items like the dress. A regrettable oversight, as I had underestimated its full value at the time. However, my policy might cover theft or vandalism of personal property. Keywords, I mused aloud to Adam, and inadvertently, in front of my own sister, not Esil, who was visiting that day. My sister, ever the pragmatist, offhandedly said, "Well, it was effectively stolen and vandalized by your SIL." We chuckled, a brief moment of dark humor amidst the stress. But apparently, my phone's voice assistant activated and caught part of that conversation in a voice text. I was in the middle of composing an unrelated text to MIL right before, and I didn't realize it had recorded that snippet and hit send. Mill received a text partially quoting my sister saying something like, "It was effectively stolen and vandalized by your SIL. Oh boy." Mill was, understandably, not happy to see the words stolen and vandalized. She immediately called, upset, accusing us of calling Becca a thief. I quickly explained it was completely out of context, that we were just talking generally about insurance terms, not accusing Becca of being a criminal in a legal sense. Mill cooled down a bit after I explained, but I could tell this whole thing had her on edge, constantly worried that we might suddenly sue or press charges or something. I assured her again, we preferred to handle this within the family, and that the comment wasn't meant to be taken as a legal accusation. It was a bit awkward, but crisis averted. Anyway, as of now, the plan is this. My in-laws and Becca are working on a written agreement. Adam has agreed that once we have that signed commitment, and presumably a down payment of the first chunk, they mentioned giving us $2,000 in a week or two as a show of good faith, he will unlock the college fund for her next semester. We also discussed consequences beyond just the money. We want her to truly learn from this, not just throw cash that isn't even truly hers at the problem. We haven't finalized this part yet, but I floated the idea of her doing some kind of structured volunteer work, or perhaps taking a financial literacy course so she truly understands the value of $8,000 and what it takes to earn that. That might be too parenty of an ask from us, and I won't die on that hill, but it's something I'm thinking of suggesting when the moment is right. Ultimately, the money and a sincere, genuine apology were my main wants. Anything beyond that is a bonus. So, for now, it looks like we have a tentative resolution in progress. The storm, perhaps, is beginning to break. The wedding dress is gone, a painful memory. But maybe, just maybe, from its ashes, a stronger sense of responsibility and a clearer understanding of trust will emerge for everyone involved. The ball is in their court, and we're cautiously optimistic that this painful chapter might finally be closing, leaving behind lessons that, while costly, were undeniably necessary.